Hello, everyone, and welcome to match number 10 of the Glimmer Gauntlet. I am Jay Gu, a commentator here, and I am joined by my partner.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, everybody. This is Jake from the podcast 40 Born, and I'm stoked to see some steel fight steel here today, Jay.
Nice. Yep. And speaking of which, exactly, we are casting the match between Shawn and Jacob. Shawn is running an Emerald Steel deck, and Jacob is running a Sapphire Steel deck. And I'll leave it to you to Jake to explain more about the gauntlet and how it runs.
Yeah. So we are in our second round of this tournament. This is an ongoing tournament put on by our friends over at the Glimmer Gang podcast. They got 15 of their friends that make content or just are part of the Lorcana community, and they decided to make an interesting format. So what you're going to see here is a rare or less format. They were each assigned randomly a color pair, and the only restriction is all of their cards have to be rare or lower. So no super rares, no legendaries. It's a best of 3 single elimination event. Both of these players have survived round 1. Shawn was able to take down Amber Sapphire in the first round. Jacob was able to take out Ruby Sapphire in the first round. So I'm interested to see how things go now that Steel's fighting Steel. But I think most importantly and most interestingly, this entire thing is for charity. Jay, you want to tell them a little bit more about that part of it?
Yeah. So essentially, both players are playing for the charity of their choice, and there is going to be a link in the description below. So go definitely check that out and support the charities. But essentially, both players are playing, and the winner gets essentially is playing for the prize. It goes to the charity of the winner's choice. So it's really a great event that is put together, and it's really just really cool to have kind of these pseudo fights, if you will, between our gladiators, and just seeing what decks they create in order to try to win this gauntlet. And speaking of which, I think it's going to be really interesting. You had mentioned again and again that it's steel versus steel, and it's gonna be really cool to see how steel adapts to this the restrictions of not being able to use super rares or legendary cards, because I know there's quite a few strong cards in steel that are kind of legendary or super rare that they don't have access to, such as a whole new world and the giant tinks. So yeah, any thoughts about this upcoming match, Jake?
Well, I have a feeling none of these characters are going to be sticking around very long. And here in round 2, we have access to the players' deck lists, and I'm seeing quite a bit of removal. I'm seeing copies of Grab Your Swords. I'm seeing copies of Rise of the Titans. I'm seeing copies of And Then Along Came Zeus. So this looks like who can get something to stick to the board and chip away at those totals. So it looks like we have 2 different takes on steel. There's going to be some overlap for sure, but from the Jacob side of things, he's leaning more into a location type strategy, where it looks like Shawn is leaning more into a a discard type strategy. So I'm really excited to see how these play out. And yeah, let's see who gets out on top.
Yeah, I think it might just end up, as we know, card draw is going to be super important, since Steel's main form of card draw is a whole new world. So one of my kind of initial thoughts is Emerald going to be able to control the other player's hand, discard maybe draw off of the Prince Johns, whereas is Sapphire going to be able to get their popsicles and Flavershams out in order to kind of draw the cards that they need? Like you mentioned, with all of the removal, It's gonna be who has the more gas after your characters keep on getting removed, right? Who can get their characters to stick and ultimately win. So yeah, card draw and removal is gonna be some key components to this matchup. Yeah, without further ado, let's start.
Yeah, so I think that Jacob won the draw here, or won the die roll and has selected to go first. I didn't see how many cards both players kept, but it seems like both players are ready for their hands. They're shuffling up, and I'm excited to see what happens in here in game one. You know,
Yeah.
being on the play, I think really favors this Sapphire Steel deck. They do have the tools to get back if they're behind, but it looks like they have the ability to make a more aggressive strategy with these Mr. Smees. And the game's underway. Turn
Yep.
one,
Uh,
Captain Hook's out.
sounds great. Could you remind me which player is on which side? I mean, we'll probably be able to figure it out based off of the color combination. But
Yeah, so Jacob is on the left. He's from Ready Set Draw, and he's repping that playmat accordingly. And then on the
nice.
right, for me and you, we have Shawn,
Ah,
who's on the Beast playmat.
got it.
And it looks
Cool,
like
cool,
both
cool.
players start
Wow.
off with a similar start.
Yep.
Captain Hook, Captain
S-
Hook.
Still, that's still players for you.
Yeah, and Jacob's gonna ink Maleficent and play out a Beast Mirror. So he has some card draw that will be on later, but right now, all he's sitting on is a Captain Hook, basically, and he passes it back over to Shawn. Let's see if Shawn can get this discard engine going with maybe a Bucky on turn two, or if he can get a morph down early. That's very scary because he has, I believe, I'm trying to do the math over here, 17 shift
Ooh,
cards on his
yeah.
list.
That would definitely fuel the Buckies. There. I, I don't know about you, but at the heart, I am a Sapphire player, so I am much more familiar with the Sapphire moves. But like you mentioned, morph. At least he had a morph in his hand, but he inked it in order to play the Bucky. Yep, it's got
Yep.
ward, a nuisance in general, just so hard to remove. And now whenever Shawn plays a uh Floodborn character.
Bloodborne.
Yeah. It makes Jacob have to discard. So
Yeah, that is going to be really annoying, and that unfortunately Jacob might be able to activate that Beast Mirror sooner than he would like. He drops down a John Silver right now, which is great with locations. For every location that's out, John Silver has one more resist and one more lore. So right now, not that threatening. But if Jacob can start dropping some locations, then Sean's removal might not be able to handle this John Silver.
yeah, you did mention Jacob is running a more kind of location based deck. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And that mirror is kind of a perfect insurance policy against discard, isn't it? Because it ensures that you never have to always top deck.
Yeah,
Or at least
it
gives
is
you a better top deck mode.
absolutely. Oh,
Oh boy,
okay. Well, not if
that's
not if they
scary.
have two Buckies. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that is concerning.
Yep. Notably, it wasn't a Prince John. So while Bucky's can force Jacob to discard cards, it doesn't actually help Shawn to draw cards. So I wonder if that will come into play. But is that McDuck Manor? That's a
That
big
is that is a
yeah.
McDuck manner for Jacob there.
Mm.
So he is going to start getting that passive lore, and now that John Silver quests for two, and it has resist one.
Yup. John Silver definitely relies on the locations, but it can boost itself really fast if you're running a lot of locations in your deck.
Absolutely.
Though, yeah, though I bet you we're probably gonna see some form of Floodborn come down. And when we say Floodborn, we essentially mean a character that can shift onto another character. So he could shift a player can shift it, but or they could just play it for their main cost. But as long as it gets played, those Buckies are going to trigger. So that's two discards there. So I wonder if that's gonna be the next play there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Jafar come down here, or trying to see maybe a Flynn Rider or a Donald Duck. He has a few different 4-drop Floodborns. And it's
Mm,
worth noting with Bucky that you don't have to shift the Floodborn to trigger Bucky and make your opponent discard. You just have to play one. So you know that Jafar, for example, in his list, he runs the 4-drop Jafar. The Dreadnought, there is no other Jafar in the list. Its only target is Morph. So in this
mhm.
situation, if he inks and then plays the Jafar, it still causes Jacob to discard 2 cards, which it looks like he's down to 2 cards anyways.
Yeah, it's
This could
gonna
get out of hand.
or shifting the
There it
Captain
is.
Hook thinking happy thoughts. Yeah, still have to discard your entire hand off of the two Buckies. And notably, Hook has five Challenger 3, I think, and has 2 normal attack. So he can probably take out the John Silver.
Yeah, this is a problem.
Hmm.
So he can take out. Let's see what he chooses to do with. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's gonna
but
opt to take out the John Silver.
yeah, the Macbeth Manor though is still going to be a problem, because it has 9 health. It's one of the most bulky of the locations, and it gains passive lore every single turn. Um, but the other interesting fact about Captain Hook thinking happy thoughts is the small Captain Hook is not able to challenge into him because only characters that cost 3 or more can challenge into that hook, I think.
Yeah, it looks like you're correct. And we see Jacob drop another John Silver. So he keeps the gas going.
Yep, just
He
on
wasn't
top
able to
deck
activate
mode.
the mirror.
Yep. The though unfortunately, I think Jacob doesn't have too much ink in order to do like he keep on using the mirrors and to play down cards. So you can see the strength of this card, especially if you can get your opponent down to no cards in hand early on. And that double Bucky is just absolutely devastating. So oh, that's another way to take out the locations. Just play. What's the card?
Rise of the Titans.
Yeah, Rise of the Titans. I'm so familiar with what cards do, but not I struggle with remembering the actual name of the cards. But that is a card that lets you essentially just destroy an item or a location. Straight up. Don't need to have to do the 9 damage. Um, and it's gonna sing Zeus's that way, dealing 5 damage to a character or location. And so that I think it seems like Shawn is pretty solidly in control of this match right now. He has the bigger board presence. Jacob is struggling to get characters on board, and he doesn't have a hand.
Yeah, so he opts to ink that John Silver to activate the mirror. Seems like he's digging for something. I'm interested to see what it is. Oh, and he plays out a Motunui location, which is a way to ramp. If he can move characters there and then they are banished in a challenge, then they go into the inkwell. Sort of like turns everything into a Grand Matala, which is fun. But
Yep.
both of these characters are running 2 copies of Rise of the Titans. It's unfortunate for Jacob that Shawn had one in hand, but then being able to follow it up with Along Came Zeus to take out that other John Silver. Yeah, I think that right now Shawn's feeling pretty good. He's in the driver's seat here, and we'll see if he's able to keep control of the situation right now.
Definitely. So, Sean's inking a Flynn Rider. Wonder what he is planning on playing next. So notably, because Jacob doesn't have any cards in hand, making him discard isn't gonna be super detrimental. But as expected, that Captain Hook has 5 attack and Montanui only has 5, so the Captain Hook takes it out, and then he plays a Bibbidi Boppity Boo, which allows him to return a character on his side of the board and play out a character that costs the same. And so he opted to return the Captain Hook along with when you return shifted cards, that entire pile of cards goes back to your hand. And so when you play out a character with the same cost, which he replayed out the Captain Hook, he was able to essentially grab that shifted Captain Hook and put it back into his hand. And so now he has that to either play or to ink as needed. And it also healed his Captain Hook.
Yeah, and it
And
looks like Jacob now is just digging for something to get back into this game. Um, he questing with these Captain Hooks. He knows that the Buckies are not going to go back into the Captain Hook probably. But
but
he's
with
trying to
that
gain the
Captain
lore while he
Hook,
still
yeah,
can.
yeah, Captain Hook is a bit of a nuisance. I think that card has been the MVP. Normally, you'd be afraid of the Captain Hook singing a whole new world, but that card is not allowed in our rares or lower uh, card pool. So essentially, Captain Hook just does its job as a character that can attack and kill things.
Yeah, and it's doing its job really well. It's put in quite a bit of work this game. So he's going to opt. Shawn is going to opt to use his Captain Hook to take out Jacob's smaller Captain Hook, and he's tapping or spending 4 to play. Is
I
that the
I
Big
can't
Flynn
see.
Rider?
Maybe,
Yeah,
yeah. I see the 4
that
lore
is.
there. Yep. That glare
Yeah,
is but yep, that is the shift Flynn Rider. So notably on the trigger is the 2 Buckies, which make Jacob have to discard the remaining remainder of his hand. And then that Flynn Rider normally has 4 lore. But for each card in your opponent's hand, it gets reduced lore. And so it works really well in a discard deck when you can make your opponent run out of cards, because now it's a character that essentially can quest for 4, which is that puts a really fast clock on the game. But it's not so good when your opponent has a lot of cards in hand there. So it's the game plan for Shawn is working perfectly right now.
yeah, and I'm sure it hurt Jacob to see that grab your sword get put in the bin. It would have been nice to take out those Buckies and get the discard engine off the
I'm fine.
table,
Yep.
but he's happy to just keep on activating that mirror and inking and playing cards. He's not out of this yet. He has plenty of ways back in, but that Flynn
Definitely.
Rider is going to close the door quickly if he can't find an answer for it.
Yup, yup,
Yeah, so he's going to gain 4 lore per turn with that Flynn Rider. He has to find an answer quickly, and I think
yup.
his only option of looking at his list is Along Came Zeus or
Zeus.
Let It Go.
Yup.
Yeah.
That grab your sword certainly. Oh man. And then we have another this just destroy the location and Captain Hook just swinging in. And now because there's no threats on Jacob's side of the field, the Buckies are questing as well.
Yeah, and so I think these are open deck lists at this point, which means
Mm.
that Jacob knows that his Rise of the Titans
Titans,
are
yeah.
basically dead because Shawn's not running any locations. So
That's
Jacob's just gonna
also
ink that and
kind of,
draw.
yeah, rough. Do you know if Shawn is running any items?
Shawn is running. Let's see. I have the list over here. No, Shawn is running 0 locations
Oh
and 0
man.
items.
So yeah, effectively just makes Rise of the Titans Inc. On the other hand, Shawn must really be appreciating his Rise of the Titans. So many juicy targets this game.
Hey, there's a Let It Go, but unfortunately, Jacob was not able to sing it. So Shawn
Yep.
plays
Hercules.
the big Hercules,
Yep.
which triggers Bucky, which causes Jacob to discard, and now Jacob is once again trying to find an answer and have
Yep.
enough ink left to cast the answer.
Yeah, and that was I think I saw a magic mirror there.
Yes.
So that goes into ink. And then a Flaversham get rid of the magic mirror to draw 2 cards. At this point, it's just digging, but yeah, I think Shawn solidly takes game 1 here.
Yeah, that was spiraling pretty quickly, and there are times when you just have to realize that this isn't happening. It's not
Yeah.
gonna You're not gonna turn a corner at a certain
Uh,
point.
y- y-
That
I,
Hercules really shut the door on that game.
Yeah, and honestly, playing against Emerald and seeing the double Buckies come down is always like just makes your stomach drop a little bit because it's so hard when your opponent can just keep on making you discard two cards. Even we saw it with the Beast Mirrors, and I'm sure he has a lot of Flavershams and Popsicles in his deck. It's just really difficult against the double Bucky. So I'm sure Jacob is just praying that Shawn doesn't giant to double Buckies or any Buckies in the future
Yeah.
games.
Yeah, I think the Bucky's the card he's the most afraid of. I know that blue or sapphire really needs cards. It's a very greedy color in terms of needing extra ink to really get going, and when they
Mhm.
can cut that supply off, it's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
So while our players are shuffling up here, I just want to again remind you this is for charity. There's a link in the notes. If you want to see which charities these players are supporting, you can find that. And there's a link to the GoFundMe where they're raising money to give to the charity that the player who wins is representing. So if one of these players makes it to the finals and they win, that entire pool goes to the charity of their choice. And yeah, they're all playing for good causes. This whole thing is for charity. Everybody's time, everybody's energy. And thanks for the Glimmer Gang for putting this together. I know it's been a lot of work for them, but it's been a lot of fun to see the community come together to pull this off. And
Yeah.
so props to them for making it happen, and props to the Lorcana community for continuing to value charity and keeping in mind what's important in life.
Definitely. And stay tuned for the later matches. I do believe that the semifinals and the final matches are going to be played live once all of the pre-semi and final matches get posted on Twitter and YouTube. Be sure to tune in and catch us for the live semifinals and finals. I'm not too sure exactly when those dates are, but I'm sure you can find additional information by taking a look at the Glimmer Gang's Twitter page. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and it looks like our players are ready for game two. All right, Jay.
all right. Good.
Let's see if
Yeah.
Jacob can get back into this.
Yeah, I wonder. Let's see if Jacob adapts his game plan a little bit now that he's a little bit more familiar with his opponent's deck or anything. But we see Dragon Cannon or whatever that card is.
Last cannon.
This last cannon. That card is one that you generally don't see run very often in competitive decks, but that's what we're here for, right? The gauntlet is making players have to make choices about running cards that are rare or less, and kind of just being able to take a look at some of these unique choices that players include in their decks is really cool. So we see it as with all blue players, a popsicle come out on the board turn one, which is a great way to start fueling your card draw stuff with Flavershams potentially in the future. We also
Yeah, and
see,
we see
yeah,
Jacob drop the possibly the best two drop in the format right now, Mr.
it's just
Smee.
me. Yep.
He's a 3/3 that quests for two. At the end of your turn, if you don't have a captain in play, deal 1 damage to Mr. Smee.
So,
It's worth noting that John Silver is a captain, so if he can follow it
yep.
up with John Silver on turn 3, that's his ideal start.
Yeah. So is Captain Hook. And I'm sure there's a lot of captains in Steel. I'm not too sure there's a bunch of captains in Sapphire, but yeah, let's see what Shawn does on turn two. Does he have the Bucky?
Well,
As
if he
we
has the
Yeah.
Bucky, oh, it
Oh.
looks like maybe the lights went off in Jacob's place, but that's okay.
How
And
ominous.
he's
No.
back.
Yeah, yep.
Jacob is playing lights out, quite literally. So
All
we
right.
see Shawn
Wait.
tapping 2 here to play Owen
Oh,
Ursula. So thank
Ursula.
you. Now the casters, we all get to see what Jacob has in hand.
Yes. But also Ursula essentially is a card that lets you discard a song from your opponent's hand. And I don't believe there are any songs, so that is a whiff from Ursula. And I don't imagine I guess Sean has seen the Let It Goes from Jacob, so he knows at least his opponent could be running some songs there. But as it stands, no discards there. And more importantly, that wasn't a turn to Bucky. And so I think that gives Jacob a little bit of breathing room in order to kind of get his draw engine going. And his Mr. Smeeds are going to be questing for quite a lot of lore coming up.
Absolutely.
Oh,
He's gonna
and
ink a let it go. Just
clearly he
dodged that one
just
from
do
the
that.
Ursula, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yep, there it is. We knew it was
Oh,
coming. We saw
yep.
the John Silver in hand, and we saw the turn 4 McDuck Manners coming down shortly. So I think that you
Yeah.
couldn't draw up a better start for this deck.
I can agree with you more. That seems scary. As they say, like a perfect curve, right? Turn 1 Popsicle, turn
Absolutely.
2 Mr. Smee, turn 3 John Silver, turn 4 McDuck Manor. It's exactly what you're hoping to get. I wonder if Sean is able to drop some hand discard, or how is he going to deal with the board?
Yeah, he has to decide, do I
Yes,
attack the
yeah.
board or do I attack the hand? And he
Yeah.
opts to attack the hand there.
Yep.
Dropping the buck, he says, I value getting those cards out of your hand more than I value getting your cards currently off the board, which I think
Yeah.
is the correct long-term play.
Yep. And notably, he's also questing, kind of assuming that Jacob is probably not as interested in attacking into his characters and more interested in trying to race him. Though I think that Jacob still has a faster clock, or is a little bit ahead in the race, especially after he gets the McDuck manners down, which I bet we're probably gonna see soon. Um, the other huge card that Jacob can draw into is the Grab Your Swords against kind of this board. And specifically against the Buckies, because while Bucky has Ward, Grab Your Swords does 2 damage across the board and doesn't need to be targeted, and so it would still kill the Buckies. So I wonder if that's what Jacob is hoping to draw into. But I'm pretty sure this turn we're gonna see a McDuck Manor come down.
Yeah, I think Jacob is trying to decide which copy of McDuck Manor he wants to play. That's what it seems like. But yeah, we know he has a Baboom and he has 2 McDuck Manors in hand. So I'm
Yep.
interested to see what he does here.
Oh, a
Okay.
Faversham.
Yeah.
That works as
He
well,
must have
just
just
to
drawn
draw.
that.
Yep.
Yep. Draw 2 and say, if you want to make me discard cards with Bucky, that's fine. I have plenty.
And that's a
Now,
huge.
challenge request here.
He's challenging. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I
Yeah, I
guess.
think.
I was about to say, if he didn't play down the McDuck Manor, it does make sense to challenge and deal with the board, because I think he's not as much in a rush to try to race his opponent. And right now, because he has a lot of cards in hand and has some pretty tough characters, and notably, I guess John Silver doesn't have resist yet. But as 3 attack, 2 defense, or 2 remaining willpower creatures now, I think he's not in as as much of a rush to outrace. But we see a second Bucky come down, and I was about to say, with just 1 Bucky, generally the Sapphire player has enough card draw to power through the discard. But with 2 Buckies, it becomes a little bit of a different story there. And so I definitely think that Jacob is feeling a bit of the pressure now from the Buckies. His ideal draw is probably gonna be getting that grab your swords to wipe out the board, but he's probably gonna try to quest a little bit more aggressively now that there's two Buckies on the field.
Absolutely, and I think we're going to see him pay 4 here to play out, yeah,
Yeah.
one of the McDuck manners. This is the way to just try to shut the door on this game before the Buckies can really get going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is a much different game than the first game. We can see the power of going first or being on the play, as uh, what kind of players call it in a match. So going first, Jacob was able to just develop that much faster, essentially kind of almost get like an extra turn before the Buckies came down and made him discard. And so it really helped get his uh, allow him to build his board state to a point where potentially discard isn't going to matter as much here.
Absolutely. Right now, he can make him discard his hand, and Jacob's still in the driver's seat here. If notably, if it's worth saying that if Shawn does have grab your swords, it would not take out the John Silver or the Flaversham, while it would take out the Mr. Smee. That's still plenty of board left sitting there. So Shawn's gonna have to get creative here to figure out how to get back into this one.
Yeah,
That does help.
I was about to say the first step does seem to be getting rid of that McDuck Manor. That card sometimes, like you mentioned, it closes games out by itself. That 2 lore passive gain is builds up really quickly. But having said that, that's only part 1 of the plan, right? There's still 3 characters that can quest. And I think you had mentioned there's another McDuck Manor lying out in wait from Jacob's side.
Absolutely, and I think we might see it here shortly. It's gonna Inca Rise of the Titans because we said that's a dead card in
Oh
this matchup
man,
for him.
yeah,
This
so
popsicle
much card
engine
draw.
is out racing the Buckies.
Yeah, so much card draw. That's what blue does. The Flavershems and the popsicles. Sometimes it depends on a little bit of luck in card draw, but generally it's been pretty consistent. Excuse me. And just
It
being
seems like
able
Jacob
to,
has 7 cards in hand.
yeah, just being able to constantly draw 2 cards and while questing with the Flaversham, so you're also gaining lore. Is that a second McDuck Manor? No, that's a
No,
Montanui.
those are 2 Matanui.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
John Silver can quest for 3
Oh,
and has resist 2 right now.
that's big. That's gonna be
Yes, that's
really
pretty
difficult to
brutal.
take out. Yeah.
So he'll quest for 3, going up to 11.
Mm.
And he'll probably quest with Mr. Smee as well and say, if you want to take it out, that's fine. I get the ink.
Yep.
Uh,
So
I'm
much
not sure
value.
how Shawn gets out of this one. But if any color
Um,
can do it, it's steel.
yeah, I think the first step would probably I don't know, like even grab your swords right now. So a lot of like board damage doesn't affect the locations, Montanui's in this case. Last game, Shawn had Captain Hooks, and Captain Hook Thinking Happy Thoughts just did a really good job of putting 5 damage onto whatever target he needs to. Unfortunately, this game, he doesn't have the Captain Hook as an attacker. In fact, he doesn't have any attackers on board. So I think it's gonna be a tough choice between putting out something that can attack, like like what he does, or like actually dealing with locations or the characters. So now that he has a Captain Hook on board, he he can probably like kill a location, do some damage with like a grab your swords or something like that. But having said that, that's
Yeah,
gonna be
Jacob has
next
these
turn,
though.
and yeah, it's already over. He can't what was it? Jacob was gonna get 2 from the Montanuis, and then he was gonna quest with John Silver and Mr. Smee for at least 5 more lore, and that's already game. So just could not keep up with the locations and the characters there.
Yeah, that game looked a little bit more. So game one, we got to see what Emerald Steel wants to do.
Mm,
Game two, we got to see what Sapphire Steel wants to do. Game three, it's back in Emerald Steel's court to go first. Sean's gonna be, I'm assuming, picking to go on the play,
yeah.
and we'll see if Sapphire Steel can slow it down and get back in the driver's seat. I know you
Cool.
start off as a disadvantage going second, but Steel and Sapphire are pretty good at getting back in control. They can use some ramp to get cards out faster. They can use removal to slow things down enough to let their ramp get their big threats out and take over the game. So I'm really excited to see how game three plays out here.
Same here. And this is actually the second game I've casted that went to a game three, and I'm just super excited because watching those game threes where everything's on the line is just really cool. Probably not as much for the players, but definitely as a spectator and as a commentator. So while the players kind of shuffle up and draw. Uh, Once again, we just like to remind you that this is for charity. The Gauntlet is just a really cool event created by the Glimmer Gang, and all the kind of the players are playing for is their charity of choice, and the link will be in the description. You should definitely go check it out. And potentially help donate or fund charities. Everything is going for such a great cause, and these are just really cool matchups where you're gonna be seeing a lot of kind of games that aren't what you normally would see in Lorcana with the meta decks, because once again the players are limited to rare cards or lower, but it's a great showcase of how creative our players are at building a deck with those restrictions and showcasing the power of the different inks that they've been assigned. So, all
Yeah.
right.
And these players are ready to roll. They've
Yep.
already taken their first turn.
Yep.
Uh, uh,
No, no turn
Sean,
one player from
Sean's,
Shawn. Okay.
yeah. Yeah, but okay. Thank you, Sean. Thank you for helping the casters out. We get to
Yep.
look at Jacob's hand again.
Definitely.
No
And once
songs.
again,
There,
no songs. But also
Jacob
notably,
has 10 songs in his list.
yeah, I was about to say it. uh, Coming from both of the games, it definitely felt like a turn to Bucky is more of an impact than a turn to Ursula. So I'm wondering, either Shawn probably doesn't have that Bucky in hand, or feels like the Ursula is the more urgent play. But also once again, notably, there is no Captain Hook thinking happy thoughts on the board right now. And when from Jacob's side, we just see the basic turn one, turn two. We don't, at least from Sean's perspective, we really hope to not see the turn three drop John Silver come down next turn. But I don't quite remember if Jacob. Do you remember if Jacob had a John Silver in
Oh,
his
yeah.
hand?
No, he has two John Silvers in hand, Jay.
Oh,
So I have
so
a feeling that next turn we're going to see him take his time figuring out which one he wants to play and which one he wants to ink. But he's getting that turn two, turn three, turn four curve that this Sapphire Steel list really likes.
oh
Smee,
yeah,
John Silver, location.
yeah. Those are the sort of choices that you want to have, thinking about which copy of John Silver you want to play, huh, as a player. But we see the morph come.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we see the morph come down. So maybe we'll be treated to a Captain Hook thinking happy thoughts, or even maybe the Hercules. Those stronger cards maybe can help deal with the Mr. Smees or the John Silvers, even with resist and stuff. So
Oh, Jay, what a surprising play from Jacob here. It's worth noting that in Sean's list, he has six different Floodborn characters, which I
got it.
like as a deck building choice because
Mhm.
sh- Jacob doesn't know what Sean might be shifting onto this morph, and that might change the way he plays because shifting a Donald Duck is not nearly as scary as
Mm,
shifting that Captain Hook.
yup, I totally agree. Do you know, other than, so I know there's Captain Hook, Donald Duck, and Hercules. Do you know what other shift targets Sean is playing,
Yeah, so
or
he
are those it?
has Yeah, he has Donald Duck, the 4-drop. He
Yep.
has the Big Flynn Rider, the 4-drop.
Yes.
He has
And
Jafar
Jafar.
Dreadnought.
There it is. Yep.
Oh, that card.
that
Uh,
so
Whenever
that
this
card is also
challenges,
good.
banishes an.
Yep.
Yeah, go
Go
ahead,
for it.
Jay.
Oh, no, it seems like you totally had it. I was just gonna explain what Jafar did, but be uh do the honors there.
Yeah, so whenever this Jafar banishes another character in a challenge, Shawn gets to draw a card. So it's his own attempt at a draw engine in Emerald Steel.
It's
But he's gonna
it's
take out that
very
Mr.
good.
Smee.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's
it is. It is.
most of the time you see that Jafar, those shift Jafars come down in steel amethyst decks that try to run the big Jafar that gains you lore for each card you draw. But it's a very different deck in this case. But being able to draw a card when you banish a character is always an amazing play. Just gets you card advantage, helps you
Yeah.
control the board. We do see a Montanui come down, so the beginning of the locations, and a little bit more scary now, where not only does Shawn have to deal with characters, but now he also has to kind of split his attention between characters and locations.
And if he chooses to take out the character, then Jacob gets to put that character in his inkwell. So I think he's maybe hoping to draw one of his two copies of Rise of the Titans right now.
Yep.
He's been able to do it every game so far. Let's see if he can get the three-peat here.
Yeah, I think that's also what this third set with the introduction of locations. Oh, and there is a Rise of the
There it is.
Titans, as you perfectly called and laid out there, Jake.
Just draw the cards you need. That's what Shawn says.
Right. Um, but I was about to say that's kind of what the introduction to Rise of the Floodborn with the locations really did. Essentially, it added another layer of complexity where it forced players now to consider both locations and characters as kind of more options to play. And so that's I kind of really like it, just having the
Yeah.
additional complexity in the game.
It's also helped me get a lot better at reading sideways, which I really appreciate. We see Hiram. You might see Jacob do some odd plays or what seems odd. Like, why play a
Mhm.
Hiram without getting value? Well, when you're playing against discard, you just have to get characters out and cards out of your hand while you can.
Mm. Exactly. And also, while Hiram doesn't get immediate value for coming down, um, Jacob might also think I may draw into an item at any time. And if I do, all I need to do is now quest with the Hiram rather than pay the 4 costs to play him in order to draw the cards. So it might be also kind of a move planning for the future move there, which is probably pretty smart because he knows he's like playing against a deck that doesn't have an easy way of getting rid of the Hiram, and Zeus's that way only does 5 damage, so Hiram still survives most of the removal from his opponent there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Sean's trying to figure out maybe he has the shift Flynn in hand, some form of removal.
Mm.
But he's opting to spend 4 ink here to play Grab Your Swords. Okay. And he's going to take out that John Silver. So that's a good play. Get
Yeah,
that threat out while it doesn't have resist. I really like that play from Shawn here.
definitely. And so I think a big part of this game is going to come down to whether or not the Hiram can get the card draw that's needed. Because I think both players are running a little bit low on gas. But having said
Never
that,
mind.
Jacob just put out 2 more huge threats with Mr. Smee and John Silver again.
Absolutely. That 3 willpower is tough,
Mm.
notably against Grab Your Sword. And then a long game Zeus could handle it, but Shawn needs to get some characters on the board that can challenge and sing
Yeah.
things if he really wants to get back into this game.
Yo. So we start off with the Flynn Rider. That kind of quests. I don't know if you can outrace Jacob with just the Flynn Rider, but the Captain Hook does represent 3 damage to something. So if he quests, oh yeah. So Zeus came that way, just takes out the Flynn Rider, which has evasive. So that was one of the only
Yeah.
ways that Jacob has to take that character out.
Yeah, this is getting out of control.
Mm-hmm.
That 6 willpower, like you said, is a big cutoff point. That along came Zeus is not going to be able to take out that Maleficent. So
Yeah.
he's threatening 3 willpower basically. Shawn has to spend at least 2 cards just to take out that Maleficent. This is looking really really tough for Shawn.
Yeah, I think this is one of the weaknesses we see from an Emerald discard engine, where if you don't get the discard online, well, he got the last card out of Jacob's hand with that Ursula. Happened to be a grab your sword, so he's probably really happy to see that go. But even having said that, I think in games 2 and 3, Sean really struggled to get his discard engine going. And if you just don't draw into the Buckies or the Prince Johns, it's very difficult. If one of your game plans revolves around making your opponent discard cards.
Absolutely. And you see Jacob there just opt to ink that Rise of the Titans. It has no targets and it's just going to get discarded. So it's going to quest for 5 per turn here. It looks like he has a
Yo,
2-turn clock right now. So Sean's going to have to find something. He's going to
14.
have to find it quick.
Yeah, he.
It's also worth noting that if Jacob draws a location next turn, then he has lethal on board because he can play it, and John Silver
Yep,
goes up to gaining 2 lore per turn, which would be
that's a
exactly
great
enough to get
point.
to 20.
That's a great point. A lot of times, yeah, like as Lorcana players in the first couple of after the first set was released, most of the time lore was represented by the characters on board, and there wasn't as easy of a way to additionally gain lore. But now we see a lot of times there's ways either from the goats or like you mentioned the locations which give John Silver an additional lore. But yeah,
Uh,
no uh, Jacob
Big
was at
gains.
19 and had a super lethal, a lot of lore on board, and Chan was just not able to, yeah, answer all of the threats there.
Yeah, these are good games from both of our players. I think they both played really, really well. In this matchup, it seemed like the mulligan was a huge part of the game. If Jacob could get his perfect 2-3-4, Sean's gonna struggle to stop that. And then if Sean could get that Bucky down, followed up with the Floodborn, it was the same tune on the opposite side. So good
Yeah.
games from our players. I'm
Yep.
really excited to see the next match. I know Jacob is either gonna be against Emerald Ruby or Ruby Amethyst. So
Oh,
we don't know the,
yeah.
the the results of that yet, but either way, Be Prepared is going to be into play in his next matchup. So we can't really go wide with that Mr. Smee and Captain Hook and John Silver. So
Well,
I'm excited to see how the next round goes.
yeah, in one sense, be prepared is scary, but in another, because Sean is running a lot of locations, it might actually kind of favor him a little bit because be prepared notably does not deal with locations there. So if he kind of
Yeah,
splits his attention between characters and locations, he's always gonna, yeah, make his opponent think twice before they play that be prepared. So it'll be really interesting seeing how his next games go too. So
absolutely. Yeah, thank you everyone for watching the Glimmer Gauntlet match. There's a few more to go. Some of them will be live. You can check out the Glimmer Gang pod on Twitter or X to see updates about when matches are released and when new matches will come out. If you want to keep up with Jacob, you can find him on Twitter and the Glimmer Gang. Sorry, Ready Set Draw is the podcast that Jacob is on, and Shawn is a part of Glimmer Gang itself. So you can find both of their Twitters through their podcasts' Twitters and find their podcasts on all major streaming platforms. My name is Jake. You can find me on the podcast called 40 Born. We talk about limited formats, so draft and sealed. Me and my buddy Taylor have a good time doing that. You can also follow us on Twitter. And then, Jay, where can they find you?
yep. My name is Jay or Jillinen. You can find me on YouTube or Twitter. with my handle Jillinen. And recently, I've been a little bit more focused on the competitive side of things, so deck building and just getting ready for some of the upcoming competitive side of Lorcana. But I'll continue to try to put out videos as I can, just more focused on strategy and more of the meta decks. So you can find me there. And thank you again so
Awesome.
much for tuning in. It's been amazing casting with you, Jake, and looking forward to doing more kind of casting and analyzing games with you in the future.
Yeah. So my name's Jake. This is Jay.
Yep.
Glimmer on.
Take care.